What's good, YouTube and Twitch? We're live to both right now with a pretty intense discussion, and that's what's happened to budget Yu-Gi-Oh! It wasn't too long ago that we were able to rip open 3 structure decks and play competitively, and it's happened time and time again, from the era of Domain to also being able to rip open 3 dinosaur structure decks and do relatively well at a regional. That seems to be going away with the latest trend. With Salmon Greats, people really expected a budget option to be there, yet Phantasme, Impermanence, and other staple cards of the metagame have destroyed those hopes. We're not seeing budget tops like we used to in the past because these staple cards are rising prices, and we can even go back to past examples like ABC. You could realistically get a top in a box with that, despite Dimensional Barrier being part of a format, Pot of Desires being in the format. ABC was able to top with budget builds at the regional level en masse. You were able to put in gadgets, kaijus, take care of that extra buster, yet here we see with the Solid Boys, the consistency of this deck and low power output need the extra backup, it feels like. And when we talk budget, one Phantasme passes the regular talk of budget in Yu-Gi-Oh!, which has increased to $100. Inflation's a thing. Yu-Gi-Oh!'s been around for almost 20 years now, so over time we've gone from budget being 30, 3 structure decks, to 50, and now the consensus is kind of $100, which also, Impermanence is, even with its reprint, at $120 for a playset of. It's no longer seeming like 3 pure structure decks are gonna do it. But there is hope. There are a couple of decks. Now, on release, the True Dracos were very expensive, but right now they're still an option in the metagame. They are topping regionals somewhat consistently. They are still here, and Card Demise just got reprinted. You can get 3 of those for around $15. It's a pretty awesome time to see, you know, Dynamite Knight peeling off the ban list, being able to still play this deck, and the Pendulum decks. They have a lot of awesome options, but outside of these two, it's really feeling like a struggle to meet under that $100 mark, even $200 mark for a lot of extra decks. And let's talk why. Boral Sword is getting its reprint after the WCQ, but even with that announcement right now, that's a $60 card, and that's a drop off from the $90 it was at. Similarly, we've seen Borolo Dragon at the $60 mark when it wasn't reprinted, and now finally it's a $10 budget option. Over time, we see this huge decrease thanks to reprints, and it's very nice, but right now, if you want that option to be able to OTK somewhat consistently, you need Boral Sword. Okay, chat's donating. What's this? Oh, just a bunch of stars. They were trying to trigger the text-to-speech. Got him. So when we're looking at options from this year from Konami, it's been relatively awesome to see a lot of the cards' rarities. Pankratops was a surprising common, which a lot of people thought would be a secret rare or minimum ultra rare and be really expensive. Call by the Grave is actually a pretty expensive common for what it is. Destrudo was a rare. For Pendulums, Darkworm was a common. Red Reboot as a side deck option was even super rare. We've got a lot of awesome budget cards in the meta, and I think the most understated one is Pankratops, which is now being played in a ton of decks as an option, and honestly is able to counter strategies like the Azathoth combo, since the rank up magic needs to be played in main phase 1. Putting Pankratops as a check on board is so awesome for a lot of decks that end up being forced to go second, as we've reverted back to going second not being as favorable in this current metagame. And I do like that we have this group of budget options that's overlooked at how expensive Yu-Gi-Oh's got in general because of these staples. I think it's understated, it's overlooked, and I do want to give Konami props where props are due. But at the same time, when we see Impermanence shorted in a set like Dual Power that has a $30 paywall as its reprint, it's a little jarring for everybody who was waiting and wanting the card. Another problem with staples is how many decks are actually relying on the Danger engine. Mainly Sneck, Nessie, and Jackalope, but even Bigfoot, less commonly used card, is sitting at $16. The Dangers are huge enablers for many a deck, budget decks and expensive decks alike. Thunder Dragon probably being one of the more expensive decks named that abuse the Danger engine relatively consistently. But how about that heroic win by Lunalights? It was aided by the Danger engine. Yikes. But there are some budget builds of Luna Lights, I've been told, that have topped regionals, so that's pretty cool. Zombies. Well, they seem to like a huge uptick in play from them because of the structure deck that came out with Ballard Roach here. And Ballard Roach is an amazing piece of support, but what really helps them out the most is being dumped for free in the graveyard, passed back and forth, and getting free advantage to link climb, and then put your negates out with the Danger Engine. There's another similar archetype that suffers this same casualty, and that's the Orcust. Orcust is super cheap. All the rarities are amazing. It's accessible to almost everybody, with only one card even ending up in the secret rare camp that's not played by everybody currently. Yet, they need the Danger Engines to get advantage for them while they're tossing them in the graveyard for free. Now, there are archetypes that have been relatively expensive, but at the same time, it's less expensive than in the past. Sky Striker started out very, very expensive, as you might recall. $100 engages. They've been around $40 for almost half a year now because of the ban list fears and continuously, oh, it's their time, it's gonna happen, we're waiting. And of course, Widow Anchor is also not the most budget. Now, speaking of staples and stun decks, we look at mentions of Altergeist perhaps in the comment section here being budget. I've even had people in the open chat, or not open chat, in the chats down below me say, hey, you can replace Extravagance with Desires and Altergeist. That's less consistent, and Altergeist is already having trouble topping. Now, Subterrors also are a huge user of Extravagance, and right now they've climbed to around $60 to $70. That's $200, passing even the mid-range tier of lower budget. And that's a yikes. It's just these staples for all these different stun decks need Extravagance because ignoring my extract, getting advantage, getting to floodgates, getting to field presence is how I'm playing. And unfortunately, that's a card that's harder to get. Now, there's plenty of other overlooked budget options that are able to do it here and there. Trick Stars, Heroes, and Cyber Dragons hit that mid tier because, well, a playset of these keep getting more expensive. Right now, as I'm speaking, it got bought out recently again, so it's from $75 a playset towards $90 a playset. And Nashor's new release is cheaper than expected, towards $30. So, like, that's $100 for 6 cards, but the rest of Cyber Dragons, relatively affordable. And there's still awesome engines that fit into the meta. We saw a really good feature match at YCS Atlanta, where you had the Shaddoll and Dinosaur mix, 2 really awesome budget decks, tearing up the meta, and we've seen that top rated on Dueling Book, but we haven't seen consistent tops on the regional scene from this. We haven't seen consistent tops on, of course, the YCS scene either, and I think there is a difference between the regional scene and YCS. I think True Draco is way more prevalent in the regional scene versus, you'll face it at YCS, but very few of the percentage of tops end up being True Draco. So I think there's still the level to say regionals are competitive events. They do have a huge say in how the meta is shaping up, but people take their most serious face on at the YCS, and you see about 1 to 2 Pendulum decks peak up into the top cut each one. You see 1 True Draco here and there, not everywhere. And so these budget options realistically keep peeling back and are more absent overall. Now, we do see a relatively new wave of staples getting budgeted recently, which is something to be thankful for. We've got Ash Blossom staying under, $30 playsets now, joining Ghost Ogre, which is now at like $18 for a playset. Common Drolls are coming out in the new Pendulum structure deck, which, again, Pendulums keep staying budget. Thank you so much, Konami. So the Spell Counter structure deck is coming out for Pendulums, and it gives us another hand trap budget. It gives us Potted Desires completely as a common too, and it also gives us a pretty big boost to how Pendulums are going to play. But you're still hitting this mid-range. Oh, well, chat, aka Distant Coder, also wanted me to mention Gem Knights have several budget tops as well, but it's just not consistent at the competitive scene that you're seeing Gem Knight after Gem Knight FTK happen over and over. I do want to say some other understated cards in terms of rarities. Thank God Nightmare Phoenix and Nightmare Cerberus were super rares, as well as Mermaid. We see a card like Unicorn at like hitting up to $40 and about $33 right now. Thank God that Konami didn't just go all out with that kind of an engine. And we do see one other deck in the metagame that is now pretty dang budget. I don't want to say super budget, pretty dang budget. And that's the good old Guard Dragon. Summoning Red Hot Dragon Archfiend Abyss is only $2 now. That's really nice. These, easy to get super rares. The Crusadia mix, pretty cheap. Blue Eyes mix, still pretty cheap. The most expensive card being Saryuja's at around $20, and you can opt to play Boral Sword or not. It's a OTK piece, but you have different OTK pieces available for your deck. Also, Rusty Bardish was locked behind a $30 product, and the Dark Warrior engine is relatively cheap as well, but the Dark Warrior engine also suffers from Danger-itis, and Dangers being the staple engine. So, like, on one hand, you're either playing stuff like Impermanence and Phantasmes if you're topping YCSs, along with a structure deck like Salad, which the cores keep getting cheaper, like I'm saying. Zombie core, cheap. Lunalight core, cheap. Salamangreat core, cheap. But the engines, such as Dangers, or the hand traps, such as Phantasme and Impermanence, are what's making everything so expensive. So, budget Yu-Gi-Oh! Does exist. You can't ignore that it exists in 2019, but the options are slimmer. Maybe they've been around longer. It's not as fresh of a strategy, and realistically, to top, you either got to get real creative and show off and show what you can do with maybe some legacy support. Maybe heroes are being slept on with all that new support, but you've got to get out there to the tournaments and make it happen. Prove the results of the decks you're about to say down below in the comment section and what you all have been saying. Madolche, see, where are the Madolche tops? You better make it happen. But thanks, that's all from me. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed the conversation. And truly, let me know what you think of budget Yu-Gi-Oh! In 2018. I compare it to, if you're realistically slamming down for Yu-Gi-Oh! These days, you're spending at least what a gaming console costs before popping any games. And if you're wanting the extra stuff, you gotta buy some games. And that's where Yu-Gi-Oh's at right now. And you've got to consistently keep flipping and being aware of reprints and taking care of your value. Right now, we're kind of in that age, but there's a lot of decks that last forever. Burning Abyss, I'm sure we'll find a way back, even if it's Black Dragon, Turbo, and Burning Abyss. There's got to be a way. It's going to play when Cherubini comes out, but will Cherubini be budget? There's a lot of options that have been around for a while, but it's up to you to make the smart ones. Thank you so much for watching, and seriously, I want to hear your opinion in the comment section down below.